All right, here we go. If you don't know what you want, then you're going to allow someone else to control the agenda. Donald Trump is an agent of chaos. He knows how to manipulate the news cycle, how to toss hand grenades into the public square and get everybody frantic. And then just when we think we're calming down, he throws a brand new grenade. He knows what he's doing, and he gets away with it because too many of us don't know what we want. On today's show, how to stay focused and not allow yourself to fall prey to every single one of Donald Trump's phony threats. He's a liar. He makes false promises. Don't dignify them. For example, I don't think he's going to do the tariffs. I think he's going to destroy lives when it comes to the undocumented Americans. I think he's going to round up just enough to satisfy the bloodlust of his supporters. But he also knows deporting these people, he also knows the tariffs would destroy our economy. What he's going to do, if we let him, is torture a lot of migrants for show. He's going to torture the dreamers for show and undocumented Americans for show, and to create profits for his for-profit prison cronies, the people who run the for-profit detention centers. He'll fill those up. And he's going to try to extend the tax cuts for the rich. There won't be, I don't believe, drill baby drill. Even Exxon says the days of drill baby drill are over. There's more money to be made in keeping it in the ground and charging more for it. So some of the things Trump is going to try to do are real, but most of what he's going to do is distract us, which will keep us from fighting him on the important stuff. You have to know what's important. And you have to know what you want. We have to make Donald Trump and the Republicans respond to us, not the other way around. And we accomplish that by knowing precisely what we want. I will discuss this on today's show. Also, on today's show, Rudy Giuliani completely melts down in a New York City courtroom and screams at the judge. Trump, once again, controls the news cycle as leading news organizations dignify his phony threats of massive tariffs on Canada and Mexico that are as real as that wall he's going to build. President Biden announces he's brokered a ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel, another thing Donald Trump can now take credit for. Trump's longtime advisor and close friend to his idiot son, Eric, is now being elbowed out of the Mar-a-Lago private circle after a physical altercation accompanied by accusations of his selling access to Donald Trump. No, somebody selling access to Donald? I refuse to believe that. President Biden introduces new rules ordering Medicare and Medicaid to cover a new generation of weight loss drugs. Just in time, Americans are expected to gain on average 6 pounds during the next 4 weeks as we all begin doom eating. Tom Homan, Trump's misshapen border czar, who isn't sexually dysfunctional, not at all, he has threatened to lock up the mayor of a sanctuary city. Again, Tom Homan, the former director of ICE and Trump's new border czar, is not sexually dysfunctional, not at all. The Harris campaign is under scrutiny for spending several million on private jets. Why did Kamala Harris's campaign donate $500,000 to the Reverend Al Sharpton's nonprofit organization in the lead up to the election? Actress Sharon Stone responds to Donald Trump's victory over Kamala Harris with a stern warning for men. I'll play it for you. You better pay attention. And Trump's choice for labor secretary, Congresswoman Lori Chavez DeRemer of Oregon, Turns out she's one of 3 Republicans who voted in favor of the PRO Act, which would make it easier for workers to organize. Sounds to me like Trump plucked her out of Congress, so she'll never vote for it again. In March of 2022, workers at an Amazon warehouse near JFK Airport in New York voted to organize, making them the first Amazon workers in America to gain union representation. Despite Amazon spending millions on legal challenges, the Biden administration's NLRB recognized the Amazon labor union as the duly elected representative for the 8,000 workers and ordered Amazon to negotiate a minimum basic agreement with them immediately. Defying repeated court orders, Amazon has yet to sit down with the Amazon labor union and iron out a contract. This is one of the reasons Amazon workers in 30 countries will stage Make Amazon Pay protests between Black Friday and Cyber Monday. The protests call for Amazon to recognize more unions around the world, pay livable wages, and improve working conditions. Among the countries participating in this protest, the United States, France, where they do have unions at Amazon, Italy, Germany, the United Kingdom, Japan, Brazil, India, and Bangladesh. 40% of all online Christmas shopping this year will take place on Amazon, according to Investors Business Daily. Texas is refusing to look into that state's increase in pregnancy-related deaths ever since its new anti-abortion law went into effect 2 years ago. The Texas Maternal Mortality and Morbidity Review Committee comprises 23 medical professionals, including doctors. In September, they voted not to pour over what they called a backlog of cases starting in 2022 when Texas made abortion illegal in almost every case. They're just not going to study it. Willful ignorance is the only way Texas Republicans can survive. It's the only way Republicans can survive, through willful ignorance. In 1996, Congress passed the Dickey Amendment, introduced by Jay Dickey, a Republican from Arkansas. This Dickey Amendment prevented the CDC from researching and keeping tabs on gun violence. It was something the National Rifle Association wanted. But following the Sandy Hook school shooting in 2012, Dickey actually apologized for the Dickey Amendment, and President Obama ordered the CDC to begin keeping tabs on gun violence in America. But that didn't help Jay Dickey when he passed away in 2017. The New York Times headline read, "Jay Dickey, Arkansas lawmaker who blocked gun research, dies at 77. It didn't say Jay Dickey, Arkansas lawmaker who apologized for blocking gun research, dies at 77. How do you want to be remembered? The Daily Beast reports that while Kamala Harris's advisors told her not to go on Joe Rogan's podcast, which Bernie Sanders did and ended up getting an endorsement from the homunculus Joe Rogan, Kamala Harris's advisors said, don't go on Joe Rogan's podcast, but they did make a request for her to appear on Hot Ones, a very popular YouTube program where celebrity guests eat a series of chicken wings that get progressively hotter as they answer questions about their career and personal lives. The host of Hot Ones turned down the request from the Harris campaign, saying, I don't really think it's appropriate for a future president to appear on my show. So I guess that's what kept Kamala from doing all those press conferences. No hot sauce. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is vacationing in Hawaii and is reportedly considering a run in 2028. Yeah, that's not going to happen. The backstabbing is already going on. The fingers are being pointed. Even Nancy Pelosi, who forced Joe Biden out, is now saying, I never wanted Kamala Harris to be the nominee. That's what Nancy Pelosi is saying. She orchestrated Joe Biden stepping down and that is now saying, I wanted an open convention. Sure you did. The Hill confirms this morning that despite raising more than $1 billion in 3 months, Kamala Harris's campaign is in fact $20 million in debt. Now, the Harris campaign denied they were in debt, but now they are confirming it. And the Democratic Party has been forced to fire union staffers with no warning or severance pay, leaving them to scramble this holiday season to pay their rent and, of course, their health care. No benefits. They're going to lose their benefits. The party of the working man. The Hill reports that the Harris campaign spent $4 million on private jets in 3 months. Now, I don't know. She was doing 3 or 4 campaign stops a day in 3 or 4 different states. And I don't mind her or Coach Waltz using private jets. I'd like to know who else besides Harris and Waltz were flying on private jets. Was David Plouffe on one? I don't know. It might actually just be Harris and Waltz who use the private jets. Does it cost $4 million in 2 months to fly Harris and Waltz around the country? Maybe it does. $4 million. If the private jets were just used for Harris and Waltz, I have no problem. That being said, a candidate for president and a candidate for vice president should have access to private jets. But Damian Carrington over at Mother Jones wrote 2 months ago that rich people, especially here in America, are treating private jets like taxis. And by so doing, they're creating more greenhouse gases in 1 hour than you and I do all year. Private jets are the most fuel inefficient mode of transportation. They create more greenhouse gases per passenger than any other way to get somewhere. Carrington writes that 0.0003% of the world's population fly on these jets, which in 2023 produced carbon emissions equal to that of 60 million people. He writes that rich oligarchs are using a special service to keep the identity of their private jets secret. Among the worst abusers of private jets, Steven Spielberg, Oprah Winfrey, Elon Musk, and Drake, and Taylor Swift. Maine's Attorney General Aaron Frey on Tuesday announced he is suing Exxon, Shell, Chevron, BP, Sunoco, and the American Petroleum Institute for lying to the people of Maine for decades about the part fossil fuel plays in heating up our planet. In his lawsuit, he claims these companies knew they were destroying our planet as far back as the 1960s. 20 other states, cities, counties, and Native American tribes have also filed similar lawsuits in places like Massachusetts, Vermont, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Minnesota, and California. Remember I said I was going to focus on what's really important? This is important. Suing the oil companies. The lawsuit in Maine, along with these other lawsuits, claim the oil companies have placed a financial burden here, in this case, on the state of Maine, and the state of Maine is now demanding to be reimbursed by the oil companies. Sue them out of business. This is what's important. Don't get distracted by shiny objects like tariffs. This is what you're supposed to focus on. President Biden, who I'm going to miss, I've been reading up on his accomplishments. Under the radar, It's incredible what this man accomplished. President Biden announced he was able to broker a peace deal between Israel and Hezbollah, which went into effect early this morning. Fighting between Israel and the paramilitary organization Hezbollah, stationed in Lebanon, fighting between the two broke out on October 7th, 2023, after Hezbollah began firing missiles into northern Israel to show solidarity with Hamas, which had just launched its attack. Fighting has killed almost 4,000 people in Lebanon this year, injuring 16,000. President Biden, in making the announcement, said because of the fighting, 70,000 Israelis have become refugees and 300,000 Lebanese civilians have become refugees, all in their own countries. In making the announcement of the ceasefire, President Biden placed blame solely on Hezbollah. He said the people of Israel, the people of Lebanon, the people of America did not want Hezbollah to launch missile strikes into northern Israel. This is the mop-up for November 27th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Please like this episode, please, so I remain in your feed. Also, subscribe to this channel and subscribe to my newsletter and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And I'm migrating away from Twitter over to Blue Sky. Please follow me on Blue Sky. Australia's House of Representatives voted on Tuesday to approve a ban on social media. Even for Blue Sky? They approved a ban on social media. Australia's House of Representatives did. A ban on social media for children under the age of 16. The measure passed overwhelmingly with 102 in favor, only 13 opposed. The Australian Senate will debate the measure later today. According to the Associated Press, TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, Reddit, Twitter, and Instagram could be fined as much as $33 million American dollars if they fail to keep Australian children off their platforms. That's if this law is passed. The Los Angeles Times reports this morning that Dr. Oz, Trump's choice to run Medicare and Medicaid, Dr. Oz is heavily invested in companies that do business with these two federal agencies. The Los Angeles Times says Dr. Oz's investments in United Healthcare and several pharmaceutical companies add up to tens of millions of dollars. The Times said they were working off financial disclosures made by Dr. Oz when he ran for Senate in Pennsylvania and lost back in 2022. These hearings are important because you want to slow everything down. Find a scandal, blow it out of proportion, grind the Trump administration. Just grind it to a halt. Don't give them an inch. Oz will be in charge of Medicare and Medicaid. Now, I'm going to talk briefly about Medicare Advantage, which nobody really understands. And because nobody really understands what Medicare Advantage is, private health insurance companies are able to swoop in and rip unsuspecting victims off. The Biden administration announced on Tuesday new rules regarding Medicare Advantage. These are likely to go into effect before Biden leaves office. Medicare Advantage is private health insurance that some seniors take out to supplement Medicare, to fill in the gaps that are not covered by Medicare. But Medicare Advantage is considered a ripoff by leading consumer advocates like Ralph Nader, as well as the people's lobbyist, Public Citizen. Ralph Nader calls it Medicare Disadvantage. Medigap is different from Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage will kill you. It's the for-profit health insurance companies insinuating themselves into Medicare. So, under Joe Biden's new rules, Medicare Advantage would be subject to tighter regulations regarding false advertising, and Medicare Advantage will be ordered to speed up prior authorizations for medical procedures and prescription drugs. On Tuesday, Robert Weissman, who heads Public Citizen, accused private health insurance companies of stealing $82 billion a year from Medicare through Medicare Advantage by overcharging taxpayers for medical services not provided through their Medicare Advantage programs. Weissman over at Public Citizen points out that when seniors appeal Medicare Advantage's decision not to provide coverage, the government overrules Medicare Advantage more than 80% of the time. Medicare recommends signing up for the original Medicare with a Medigap plan, which means unlike Medicare Advantage, you can see any provider that accepts Medicare in America. Medigap, not Medicare Advantage. If it's confusing, well, Medicare needs to do a better job explaining this. So, by the way, if you're donating this year, give to Public Citizen. They are the people's lobbyist. They are perfect. Go to Public Citizen, go to their website. They are perfect, and you should donate money this holiday season to Public Citizen. President Biden also proposed new rules ordering Medicare and Medicaid to cover the next generation of weight loss drugs. 2/3 of Americans are either fat or obese. Public Citizen Access to Medicine's director, Peter May-Barduk, warned yesterday that unless Medicare makes it possible for generic versions of these new drugs, these new weight loss drugs, to be manufactured, then this new proposal to make this new generation of weight loss drugs available will tack on $36 billion in additional federal spending over the next decade, along with $4 billion in additional state spending for Medicaid. Public Citizen says these weight loss drugs only cost a few dollars to make, but Big Pharma charges patients hundreds of dollars for them. Bobby Kennedy, Donald Trump's pick to run the Department of Health and Human Services, is on record opposing these new weight loss drugs. Kennedy, seen here chowing down on a Big Mac, fries, and a Coke, insists the answer to obesity isn't found in a drug. He says the answer is in eating healthier. Kennedy claims he hasn't had a Coke or eaten McDonald's in years because he says it's poison. When asked if Kennedy did in fact eat the meal you see in front of him, Speaker Mike Johnson said yes, he ate it. It's almost as though Bobby Kennedy is a liar. There's new reporting this morning that because Donald Trump is not using the FBI to perform background checks on his nominees, confirmation hearings are going to end up being one Brett Kavanaugh shit show after another. And this is important. These nominations, you want to grind the Trump administration. You would just want to make it grind to a halt to protect Joe Biden's accomplishments. Kennedy's nomination to head HHS could be sunk by longtime accusations of sexual misconduct. Why is it important? Because we can grind the Trump administration to a halt. The Wall Street Journal, and sexual assault is illegal and immoral. The Wall Street Journal reports this morning that a former intern who worked as a babysitter for Bobby Kennedy accused him of touching her improperly and says she's willing to testify during the confirmation hearings. When Vanity Fair first published the accusations this year, Kennedy sent his accuser a text that said, quote, "I read your description of an episode in which I touched you in an unwanted manner. I have no memory of this incident, but I apologize sincerely for anything I ever did that made you feel uncomfortable or anything I did or said that offended you or hurt your feelings. I would never intend to do you harm. If I hurt you, it was inadvertent. I feel badly for doing so." Harvey Weinstein's attorney filed a complaint calling conditions at New York City's Rikers Island a gulag. Weinstein is being held there as he waits to be tried for rape next year. Weinstein's lawyer complained that Harvey has severe medical conditions for which he is not being treated, and his living conditions at Rikers Island are squalid, with prison officials not even giving him clean underwear. Yes, that's Rikers Island. And the rich and powerful are shocked to discover how bad our prison system is, but only when they themselves are the victims of it. Accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award over the weekend at the Torino Film Festival in Turin, Italy, actor Sharon Stone was asked to comment on Donald Trump's defeat over Kamala Harris.
The only way that we can help with these issues is to help each other. Now, we can't just say that women should help women, because that's the only way we have survived so far. We must say that good men must help good men, and those good men must be very aware that a lot of your friends are not good men. And you can't continue to pretend that your friends are good men when they are not good men. And you must be very clear-minded and understand that your friends who are not good men are dangerous, violent men, and you have to keep them away from your daughters, your wives, and your girlfriends. Because this is a time when we can no longer look away when bad men are bad.
That's what this election was partly about. And you cannot get close to Donald Trump unless you're a bad man. Trump's lawyer and political advisor, Boris Epshteyn, was arrested in Scottsdale, Arizona 3 years ago after two women accused him of sexual assault. The charges were dropped after he entered a plea of guilty to disorderly conduct and agreed to get treated for alcoholism, which is what he agreed to in 2014 after he was arrested for a physical confrontation in another bar. Epshteyn was recently indicted by an Arizona grand jury for the role he played in that state's 2020 false elector scheme. And now it looks like the guy with sharp elbows is being elbowed out of the Mar-a-Lago inner circle. Epshteyn considers himself one of Trump's original gangsters. He was there in 2017 and has been jealous as well as adversarial towards Elon Musk and Howard Lutnick, the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. Yes, that Cantor Fitzgerald, Howard Lutnick, who has been running Trump's transition team into the ground. When Lutnick blocked a doorway, refusing to allow Epshteyn to enter a meeting in Mar-a-Lago, the Washington Post reports that Epshteyn shoved him. And now Lutnick is coming for Epshteyn. An internal investigation has been launched, and it revealed that Boris Epshteyn, was self-dealing, offering pay-to-play deals to people who wanted to work in the new Trump administration. Dear Lord, shocking. So far, this is just an internal review, no criminal charges. Because if you bring in a prosecutor, Epstein's going to say, I'm the least of the pay-to-play problems here in Mar-a-Lago. It is being used, this internal investigation is being used by high-ranking Trump officials to keep Boris Epshteyn out of Trump's orbit. There is some reporting this morning that Epshteyn is said to have demanded $100,000 for help in getting a cabinet position. Epshteyn was brought into the Trump orbit by Eric Trump, Donald Trump's idiot son, who attended Georgetown with Epshteyn. Appearing on Fox News 2 nights ago, however, Eric Trump threw Boris Epshteyn under the bus, saying, quote, I've known Boris for years, and I've never known him to be anything but a good human being. That said, I will tell you, my father has been incredibly clear. You do not do that under any circumstance. Yes, unless my father gets to dip his beak. I certainly hope the reporting is false, and I can also tell you if it's true, the person will probably no longer be around. Boris Epstein, among his many sins, ate alone. That's what they say in the mafia. He ate alone. He didn't allow others to dip their beak. Boris Epstein is out of Trump's orbit, but then he'll come back. They always come back. There is some reporting, not sure if it's true, that Epstein reportedly hit up Scott Bessent for money to recommend him as Treasury Secretary. Bessent turned him down. He's a billionaire hedge fund manager who once worked for George Soros. It's one of the reasons I don't think the tariffs are going to happen. Maybe I'm wrong. And I don't think the deportations are going to happen on a massive scale. I think people are going to get rich with the for-profit prisons, and I think lives are going to be ruined with these deportations, and we have to abolish ICE, and we have to really fight there. I don't see them rounding up 14 million or 1 million undocumented Americans. I hope I'm right. Bessent, the new Treasury pick, is openly gay, married to a man with whom he shares 2 children. David Korn over at Mother Jones has a new piece entitled, Tulsi Gabbard Keeps Starting Up PACs. Where's the money going? Tulsi Gabbard is Trump's pick to head the Department of National Intelligence. Because the FBI won't be doing any vetting, the hearings before the Senate Intelligence Committee will be interesting when they question her. According to David Korn over at Mother Jones, he's been on this show, Gabbard has set up several political action committees using dark money and refuses to say how that money is being spent. Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth on Sunday accused Tulsi Gabbard of being a Russian asset. If the Gabbard nomination falls through, there's always this intellectual heavyweight, Republican Congresswoman from Florida, Anna Paulina Luna, who tweeted yesterday, the American taxpayer should not be burdened with the cost of Zelensky's war. They must pay back every cent they owe. It's billions and billions of dollars. She wants Zelensky to pay us back for everything we've given them. That's what the pro-Putin wing of the Republican caucus is being paid to say. Last week, disgraced former congressman, former pick for attorney general, and possible sex trafficker of underage girls, Matt Gaetz, allegedly possible sex trafficker of underage girls, Matt Gaetz announced he would be joining Cameo, charging $500 to wish someone a happy birthday, which is strange because according to the ethics report, Gaetz didn't really pay too much attention to when someone was born. Didn't really care what your birth date was. Lauren Boebert, Colorado's Grandmother of the Year, after hearing that Matt Gaetz was on Cameo, announced she too was joining Cameo. A sitting United States Congresswoman, Lauren Boebert, announced that she would be on Cameo. She recorded a message charging $250 for what she called an America First pep talk. But the next day, she shut it down. Yeah, turns out if you're a United States Congresswoman, I know it's hard to believe, but you're not allowed to go on Cameo and charge random people $250 for pep talks. Aaron Sherb, Senior Director of Legislative Affairs for Common Cause, was interviewed by Colorado Politics. He said members of the House of Representatives are expected to live on their salary and are only permitted to earn an additional $31,815 a year from outside work, like speaking engagements. Well, sounds like Lauren Boebert needs more money. She should go work for the Trump White House. They don't care what you do on the side. In fact, former head of ICE, Tom Homan, was lured back into the Trump White House to work as border czar with a guarantee that he could work in the White House and not have to give up his lucrative side hustle over at OnlyFans. Yeah, that's Tom Homan, former head of ICE, soon to be America's border czar. He is the enemy of the people. If he's allowed to go through with these deportations, he will torture, destroy lives, put money in the pockets of the for-profit prison companies, and he'll destroy our economy. This is public enemy number one, Tom Homan. Tom Homan. There is big money in private detention facilities. Stock in America's largest provider for for-profit detention facilities, Geo Group, soared after Donald Trump won the election. Geo Group told Wall Street analysts that they stand to pocket hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars once ICE starts rounding up undocumented Americans, and he will facilitate it. Tom Homan, former head of ICE, works over at Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation. Good man, good man. The Intercept reported last week that Pam Bondi, Trump's new pick for Attorney General, became a lobbyist after leaving her job as Florida Attorney General back in 2019. As a lobbyist, she immediately began working for Geo Group, America's largest for-profit prison corporation. This is the same company, by the way, that offers inmates an extra bowl of soup if they're willing to be part of the maintenance crew. That's what they do. They make the inmates work for free and then offer them an extra bowl of soup. What movie does that remind you of? The one directed by Steven Spielberg. The mayor of Denver, Mike Johnson, said his city is a sanctuary for migrants and undocumented Americans, and he announced he is going to block the mass deportations, even if it means he has to go to jail. When told about this on Fox News, future border czar Tom Homan warned, quote, he better get out of the way. Homan said, quote, I'm willing to put him in jail. That's what Thomas Homan said. Then Homan said, who told you I have to pay for sex? Why do people keep saying I have to pay for sex? Do I look like a guy who has to pay for sex? Then Homan said, for the last time, I don't need to pay for sex. Seriously, do I look like a guy who needs to pay for sex? There's a lot of sex in my life because my thing down under works. I'm very potent and I have a healthy libido. That's why I separate families and I put kids in cages because my thing down under works. So stop saying I have to pay for sex or I'm a deviant, because I'm not. I have a very healthy libido. And I never ask my frumpy fire hydrant of a wife to do things that are frowned upon by our church, unquote. Then Homan said, I don't reek of sulfuric acid and Old Spice. Why does everybody say I reek of sulfuric acid and Old Spice? Then he said, my daughter's face doesn't look like a catcher's mitt. Tom Homan said on Fox, why does everybody say my daughter's face looks like a catcher's mitt, unquote. Wait, we have late breaking news. You might remember I reported last week that Stephen Chung was named by Donald Trump to be the White House communications director. We are now getting reports that Stephen Chung is still expected to be Donald Trump's White House communications director. Yes, this is the latest news. Stephen Chung is still expected to be Donald Trump's White House communications director. Wait, we have a question from border czar Tom Homan. Go ahead, Tom Homan. He asks, is that my daughter? Who? He says, Stephen Chung. Is he my daughter? This guy? Tom Homan says, yeah, that guy. Is he my daughter? No, I'm pretty certain it's Stephen Chung, Donald Trump's new White House communications director. Tom Homan is asking, well, is he my wife? No, it's Stephen Chung, Donald Trump's White House communication director. Tom Homan now says, I don't need to pay for sex. Okay, we got it. That's Thomas Homan, former head of ICE, Trump's new border czar. Some of this may have not been reported accurately. I think he did. I know he threatened to lock up the mayor of Denver. I don't know if his wife and daughter have a face that looks like a catcher's mitt. Well, I don't even know if there is a wife and daughter. I mean, could there be? I know he's virile. Donald Trump promised to impose 25% tariffs on all Mexican, Canadian, and Chinese imports on day one through executive order. What do you think? You think he's going to do this? Should we dignify this? Newly sworn in Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said during a Tuesday press conference she would respond to Trump's tariffs with her own tariffs and everybody's economy would suffer. She corrected Trump's lies and said fewer migrants are attempting to get into the United States. It's the lowest number in nearly 4 years. But why let facts get in the way of scapegoating? Then she told reporters, quote, if a percentage of what the United States spends on war were dedicated to peace and development, that would address the underlying causes of migration, unquote. Trump said, if Claudia Sheinbaum hates America so much, she can leave. Then the Mexican president accused the United States of selling all the guns used by Mexican gangs to kill each other. This is true. We get their drugs and they get our guns. She said Mexican drug cartels are fueled by demand in the United States for fentanyl. She said, quote, we do not produce weapons. We do not consume the synthetic drugs. By the way, according to the New Republic, close to 90% of all fentanyl is smuggled into the United States by U.S. citizens. But why let the facts get in the way of some dark-skinned scapegoats? I mean, it's really just amazing, the lies. Rudy Giuliani was back in court on Tuesday. And no, it wasn't the civil lawsuit where a former employee is accusing him of wage theft and rape. He's being sued for rape. It's not that lawsuit in Arizona where he's been indicted for leading the false electors scheme back in 2020. And no, it's not down in Fulton County, Georgia, where he's been indicted for trying to overturn the 2020 election results in that state. So what trial is it? It's his trial for failing to turn over his assets after a jury ordered him to pay $150 million to two election workers he defamed when he repeatedly accused them of stuffing ballots for Joe Biden. Rudy has turned over his $6 million apartment, but he has yet to turn over the furniture, which he's keeping in a storage facility, and he claims he doesn't have the key to it. He's turned over his collection of watches and his 1980 Mercedes, once owned by Lauren Bacall, but he hasn't been able to hand the title to that car over to the election workers. He's just given them the keys to the car and the car. Rudy, who just turned 80, began screaming at the judge yesterday. That judge is Louis Lyman, who, by the way, was appointed by Donald Trump. Rudy got very upset when Judge Lyman lectured Rudy and said, quote, "A car without a title is meaningless." Then Judge Lyman turned to Rudy's lawyer and said, "Your client is a competent person. He was the United States attorney in this district. The notion that he can't apply for a title certificate?" And Rudy interrupted the judge and began screaming at him, quote, "I did apply for it. What am I supposed to do? Make it up myself? Your implication that I have not been diligent about it is totally incorrect." It's actually not an implication. He's threatening to lock you up. And if you weren't white, you'd be locked up. Rudy completely lost it and should have been locked up and started screaming at the judge yesterday. And the judge told Rudy to be quiet. But Rudy kept shouting, "I don't have a car. I don't have a credit card. I don't have cash. I can't pay my bills." And the judge said, "I don't believe you." A trial is now scheduled in 6 weeks to determine whether Rudy has to turn over his multi-million-dollar Florida home. He turned over his $5 million home in New York to the election workers. Now he's fighting to keep his multi-million-dollar Florida home, and he's fighting to keep his World Series rings that he swears he gave to his idiot son, Andrew, as a gift. Rudy then spoke to reporters afterward and accused the judge. I'm not making this up. And yes, this makes me very happy. It does. Rudy accused the judge of being a political hack. He said Judge Lyman's background is serious left-wing Democrat, about as left-wing as you can get. When Rudy was reminded that Judge Lyman was appointed by Donald Trump in 2017, Rudy quickly changed the subject. According to The Guardian, Rudy was then asked if he regretted defaming the two election workers, and Rudy said, "No, I regret the persecution I have been put through." Then Rudy went back to his new apartment in New York. It's a handicapped restroom stall inside the New York City Port Authority building. Here he is later in the day visiting his buddy, former police commissioner Bernard Kerik, who tells him, "No, you can't crash here. Publishing giant Judith Regan is coming over for a tete-a-tete." Rudy said, "Fine, I'll go eat by myself." Hey, happy Thanksgiving, Rudy. Your buddy, Donald Trump, really helped you out. You know, instead of loyalty to him, you should have tried loyalty to our Constitution. Rot, Rudy, rot. This is the mop-up for November 27th, 2024. I'm David Feldman. Please like this episode. Follow me on Blue Sky. Speaking of Rudy, the city of Oakland on Election Day voted to recall their district attorney, Pamela Price, because they said she's too soft on crime. This despite homicide rates in Oakland plunging 30% in 2024. Crime is going down, but voters, even in Alameda County in Oakland, California, can't read the statistics. The International Landmine Conference in Cambodia was hit by protests after President Biden agreed to provide the landmines to Ukraine in order to fight Russian troops. The United States and Russia are not signatories to the anti-personnel mine ban treaty. Ukraine did sign that treaty. Tamar Gabelnik, director of the international campaign to ban landmines, told French news agency, quote, "These weapons have no place in today's warfare." America won't sign the landmine treaty and is not a signatory to the International Criminal Court. As George W. Bush once said, why do they hate us? Tom Nichols has a great piece over at The Atlantic magazine entitled The Trump Marathon. Nichols says Trump knows how to exhaust us. This is what I was talking about at the top of the show. And he said, you really have to not allow him to wear you down. He says, think of the next 4 years as a marathon. I think of it as the next 2 years. I think in 2 years, we either win back the House or the Senate. We've got divided government, and we cripple him politically. Tom Nichols over at The Atlantic magazine writes, quote, if Americans want to hold Trump accountable in a second term, they must keep their heads when he uses chaos as a strategy. By overwhelming people with the sheer volume and vulgarity of his antics, Trump and his team are trying to burn out the part of our brains that can discern truth from fiction, right from wrong, good from evil. He says Trump isn't worried that all of this will cause voters to have a kind of mental meltdown. He's counting on it. He needs ordinary citizens to become so mired in moral chaos and so cognitively paralyzed that they are unable to comprehend the disasters that will ensue when he returns to the White House. So, he says this means setting priorities. Tom Nichols says his priorities are preserving democracy and national security. And he says he's going to conserve his mental energy and political effort to concentrate specifically on those issues. So, this is what I'm talking about. That's why I say we spend the next 2 years ignoring the hand grenades that Donald Trump throws into the public square. Ignore the tariffs. I don't think it's going to happen. I am kind of offended that this is the news cycle right now. All these great things that Joe Biden is doing, and they're talking about threats of tariffs. We have to fight him, especially on the deportations. That's where we have to stop him. We have to make Tom Homan, we have to make his political and professional life untenable. But you have to know what's important and what isn't. That's why I said at the top of the show, if you don't know what you want, then you will spend your life reacting. That's what is wrong with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party really can't bring itself to fight the oil companies, fight the for-profit health insurance companies, fight for unions, raise the minimum wage. I mean, when you look at who runs the Democratic Party, they really don't know what they want except more money for themselves and more power for themselves, but not more money for the working poor and the poor. So when you don't know what you want politically, you're reacting to whatever Donald Trump throws in front of you. What's important? Well, first, you have to preserve the gains of the past 4 years. Donald Trump is going to distract us and then try to reverse all that Joe Biden accomplished. And you would know what Joe Biden accomplished if the media and the Democrats didn't keep talking about tariffs today. That's the new thing. He controls the news cycle. So let's preserve the gains of the past 4 years. Focus on making sure that Donald Trump can't erase those gains. And you do this by slowing him down by any legal means necessary. What you do is you throw each smoke bomb, each distraction right back at him. He's going to throw smoke bombs at us. He's going to distract. You put him into a state of distraction and chaos. Grind the wheels of his agenda to a halt. Fight him every step of the way. Fight him on the tariffs, the deportations, anything he wants, as Groucho Marx would say, I'm against it. Whatever he wants, we're against it. You tie up all his nominations in the hearings process. If you're lucky enough to live in a congressional district or a state with Republican lawmakers, you hound them. Do not approve Dr. Oz. Do not approve Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard. Why? Because Trump wants them. Don't let a single piece of legislation get passed. All you need is 3 or 4 Republicans in the House or 4 Republicans in the Senate, either or, and you can block extending the tax cuts for the rich. It's just that easy. You just need 3 or 4 Republicans in the House or 4 Republicans in the Senate, and you can block the entire Trump agenda, including the tax cuts, and preserve all the accomplishments of Joe Biden from the past 4 years, which we would know about if everybody weren't talking about these stupid tariffs. Grind the wheels of his agenda to a halt. We just need 2 years. Midterms, we either take back the House or the Senate, divided government, he's done. And you can accomplish this if you know what you want and you make demands. And what do you want? Medicare for all. Repeat after me. Medicare for all. Free tuition at all public universities. Tax oil companies out of existence. Raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour. Repeal Taft-Hartley to make it easier for people to unionize. Postal banking, bring back postal banking so we have an alternative to Wells Fargo. Repeal the Faircloth Amendment so the federal government can get back into the business of building low-income housing. With slim majorities in both houses, the Republicans' first order of business will be extending the 2017 Trump tax cuts that are set to expire next year. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 reportedly added $8 trillion to our national debt. By the time Trump left office, 1/3 of our national debt could be attributed to Donald Trump. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that extending these tax cuts would add an additional $5 trillion to the debt over the next decade. We have to fight these tax cuts. Before stepping aside, President Biden repeatedly pledged not to renew Trump's tax cuts if he was reelected. On the campaign trail, Biden repeatedly spoke about a wealth tax, especially on billionaires. His 2025 budget proposal, and you can go read it, this is what he's already proposed, but we're not talking about this because Trump is threatening tariffs today, and tomorrow it's going to be, I'm going to declare martial law. Instead of focusing on real substance. This is what Joe Biden's budget proposal for 2025 is. And by the way, we should have already passed the 2025 budget. He says he proposed increasing the surcharge on stock buybacks to 4%. This is amazing. His Inflation Reduction Act imposed a 1% tax on stock buybacks. Stock buybacks used to be illegal. Then Reagan became president. Companies use stock buybacks to artificially juice the price of their stock. They buy back. They're sitting on profits, and they say, well, let's use the profits instead of returning it to the shareholders in dividends, which are taxable, or instead of giving our workers a raise or investing in research and development, let's use this pool of money to buy our own stock, and that juices the price of the stock artificially. It used to be illegal. And stock buybacks keep revenue from the government. If there's $60 billion sitting in Apple's checking account, that money should be paid out as dividends to shareholders who in turn have to pay taxes on those dividends. But stock buybacks makes everybody rich on paper. That's what it does. Biden proposed this year raise the surcharge to 4%. The plan he presented to Congress this year increases taxes on corporations that paid their top executives more than $1 million a year. He has spoken out repeatedly against CEOs earning 5,000, 10,000 times the median income of their employees. He's proposing a tax on companies that pay their CEOs what they're not worth, like Rachel Maddow making $30 million a year. She's not the CEO, but why is Rachel Maddow earning $30 million a year? Why? Because if you could convince a liberal they're actually worth $30 million a year, you could convince them of anything. So she calls herself a liberal, but at $30 million a year, she's not repeating Medicare for all, tax billionaires out of existence, repeal Taft-Hartley, all that stuff. When you take a liberal and pay them $30 million a year, if you can convince them they're worth $30 million a year, you can convince them of anything. The plan that Joe Biden presented to Congress this year eliminates the billions and billions of dollars in tax subsidies for oil and gas companies. His proposal to Congress this year recommends raising the tax rate on American corporations' foreign earnings to at least 21%. He promised, if I'm elected for a second term, I will end the race to the bottom by signing an international treaty that creates a standard tax rate for corporations. That would put an end to American corporations like Apple or Microsoft expatriating their foreign profits and moving them into countries with low tax rates, like Liechtenstein or Ireland. Joe Biden presented a plan to Congress this year that eliminated real estate tax subsidies that encourage investors to keep flipping properties. If you rent and you keep wondering, why do I have a new landlord? Why do I have a new landlord? Because our tax system incentivizes landlords to keep flipping properties, which contributes to homelessness. Joe Biden's plan presented this year to Congress would make it so all billionaires pay at the very least 25% on their income. No loopholes, no exceptions. The plan called for an increase in Medicare taxes on incomes above $400,000 a year. Make the rich pay. By the way, all this a winning message. This is stuff you could run. This is how you counter Donald Trump's faux populism. Everything I just mentioned is what Joe Biden has already proposed to Congress for the 2025 budget and was running on repeatedly before he stepped aside. And this is why Bernie Sanders, of all people, says Joe Biden is the most progressive president since FDR. The more I read about what Joe Biden accomplished, the more I understand why Bernie says that. Bernie is a legislator. He understands that senators learn to do things under the radar. Joe Biden was a senator. Bernie is known as the Amendment King. He slipped an $11 billion. Bernie slipped an $11 billion amendment into Obamacare that nobody paid attention to, because what's $11 billion? Well, that amendment provides $11 billion to community health centers in low-income neighborhoods. It has played a major impact in low-income communities. It has saved millions of lives. But we're not going to talk about that because Donald Trump is waving a shiny object. Look, tariffs. And next week, it's going to be martial law. I'm not saying Donald Trump isn't dangerous. But if Bernie knows what he wants. If you know what you want, then you can beat Donald Trump and present alternatives to the American people. I went over all of Joe Biden's under-the-radar tax proposals. I've been saying this for years. The revolution isn't in the streets. It's in the details. Change the tax code, and you change the world. Change the tax code, and you change the world. This is where the fight is. I'm sorry, it's not performative. There are no heroics. It flies under the radar, but this is exactly how the Republicans won the class war against us. The Republicans waged class warfare on us. It started 40 years ago. They did it slowly and quietly, changing the tax code under the radar. They didn't have Bruce Springsteen singing songs about lowering capital gains taxes. Nothing emotional. It was methodical. And now we're a nation of the very rich and the very poor. The revolution isn't in the streets. It's in the details. Rolling up your sleeves and accomplishing all those boring proposals that Joe Biden pitched to Congress for the 2025 budget. Now, Kamala Harris officially supported a wealth tax on Americans who are worth more than $100 million. Officially, Harris promised not to extend the Trump tax cuts, which expire in 2025. Officially, but those two promises were literally on the last page of her 72-page platform. And those two proposals rarely, if ever, came up during her campaign appearances. Now, I voted for Kamala Harris. I would do it again. I thought she did a great job, given that she only had 90 days to mount a campaign, and she trusted Obama and David Plouffe and this pig, billionaire Mark Cuban, who should give me his Democratic Party membership card. It has to be revoked. Get the hell out of the Democratic Party, Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban, if you want to know, that since we're doing a post-mortem, and I'm not pointing fingers, but I know some fans of my show from way back, some Bernie people, who are laughing hysterically right now at the Democratic Party. They're going, really, you can't figure out why you lost. You can't figure out. What did we tell you in 2016? That if you don't address inequality, a faux populist with authoritarian leanings will rise up. That's what we told you in 2016. It's how we counteracted Trump in 2020, and Joe Biden got the message. Joe Biden became a Bernie bro, became a supporter of Katie Porter and Elizabeth Warren. Go over his record. Biden was terrified of Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, and Bernie. Billionaire Mark Cuban was one of Kamala Harris's top campaign surrogates because David Plouffe and Obama World said, don't piss off Wall Street. Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, Summer Lee, Katie Porter, Cori Bush. I'm sure Kamala Harris and Coach Waltz made some campaign appearances with them, but they weren't out front the way Liz Cheney and Mark Cuban were. Mark Cuban assured voters, I talked to Kamala Harris, and she's now against the wealth tax. This is what Mark Cuban, when he was campaigning, especially in Arizona, he said, I spoke to Kamala Harris. She's not for a wealth tax. As if voters in Arizona are concerned about getting rid of the wealth tax. That's a winning message for the working class in Arizona. Send billionaire Mark Cuban down there from Shark Tank and have him brag about how he convinced Kamala Harris to abandon the wealth tax. He told voters, I threw a temper tantrum when I saw her talking about a wealth tax. He literally, on the campaign trail, Mark Cuban bragged that I threw a temper tantrum about the wealth tax, and Kamala Harris agreed never to mention it again. Jeff Hauser, executive director of the Revolving Door Project, said that Mark Cuban blamed a Harris campaign aide who previously worked for Senator Elizabeth Warren. He blamed her on convincing Harris to support the wealth tax. And then he bragged, Mark Cuban bragged to voters that because of me, we got rid of the wealth tax proposal and that campaign aide got fired. Really great, smart way to win over the working class. Have a billionaire in Arizona, which is lousy with billionaires. That's who votes. That's the vote you want. You want the billionaire vote. You want a billionaire bragging about how he got somebody fired because she talked Kamala Harris into pushing the wealth tax. But people like Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton says Kamala Harris lost because working class voters didn't like her position on transgender athletes competing in high school sports. All three of them. There are 3 transgender athletes in America competing in high school sports. And Seth Moulton said, because Kamala Harris was defending them, that's why the Democrats lost. I never heard her talk about the 3 transgender high school athletes. Maybe she did. Don't remember it. He goes on to say, well, obviously, we've lost touch with the majority of Americans. Democrats have a habit of preaching down to people. That's why we lost, because we have a habit of preaching down to people. Moulton, Harvard asshole, went to Harvard. And he learned the straw man argument. Moulton or Mark Cuban, if you sat them down, they would never, ever have supported any of the tax policies that Joe Biden proposed, the ones I just reeled off there. Tax policies that are winning messages that win over the working class and the working poor. But after Obama, Mark Cuban, the consultants, David Plouffe, talked Kamala Harris out of the wealth tax, making corporations pay their fair share, taxing billionaires, taxing companies that pay their CEOs 15,000 times what the median worker gets. Those winning messages, after she's talked out of that and she loses, they immediately blame the left because we forced her to talk about transgender issues. No, we wanted her to talk about taxing billionaires out of his existence, getting rid of tax subsidies for the oil companies, taxing companies that overpay their CEOs. We care about marginalized communities, including the transgender community, but we weren't leading with that, Seth Moulton, and you know that. You forced her to suck up to billionaires. You forced her to suck up to the corporate donors, and when she loses, same old trick, you blame the left. You blame the left. Joe Biden, had the winning message. I just reeled off substantive, real, authentic change. He had a winning message that he could run on. He had trouble articulating it, but the message was excellent. It was almost perfect. Hard to argue with everything he proposed for the 2025 budget. But he had trouble articulating it. The message was excellent. So when they changed the messenger, they also switched the message. I like Kamala Harris. I voted for her. She didn't run as a progressive. She didn't. She spent more time with Mark Cuban and Liz Cheney than she did with Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Summer Lee, and Rashida Tlaib. This was not a campaign that spoke to the working class and to the poor about money. About money. You know, Coach Walsh was a genius pick. As governor of Minnesota, free breakfast, free lunch all year round for all children, no questions asked. And I thought, well, there you go. That's like, run on that. Run on that. Did anybody, did I hear that? Maybe it was mentioned. You're going to tell me that's not a winning message? Free breakfast and lunch for all children all year round, like we did in Minnesota. If we can do it in Minnesota, we can do it all across our country. See? That's a perfect message. And they had it. It's a winning message. And Joe Biden's proposals were winning messages. And he was running on them. These were winning messages. Make rich people pay more to subsidize Medicare. It's in his tax proposal. If you're making more than $400,000 a year, you have to chip in more for Medicare. No more tax incentives for landlords to flip properties. No more billions of dollars in tax subsidies for oil companies. Why are we paying oil companies billions of dollars to kill us? This is a winning message. He's already proposed it. He was going to run on this. Punish corporations for stock buybacks. You're going to tell me that's not a winning message for the working poor, for unions, for poor people? Punish corporations that hide money overseas. Punish billionaires by making them pay at least 25% of their income. Don't have Mark Cuban stump for you. Punish him. Scapegoat him. That's how you win elections. That's why Donald Trump won. He scapegoats. Punish corporations that pay executives too much and employees too little. You don't have to go with my message, which is Medicare for all. Free tuition at all public universities. Tax oil companies out of existence. Raise the minimum wage to $20. Repeal Taft-Hartley to make it easier for unions to organize. Postal banking. Repeal the Faircloth Amendment. And of course, build a home for Marjorie Taylor Greene so she can have a place where nobody can hear her and she can get the treatment she needs. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you so much for listening to me. Please like this episode. That way I remain in your feed. Don't allow people to control the narrative or the conversation. Don't allow Trump in the next 2 years to freak you out, to scare you, to distract you. You got to know what you want. And the problem with the Democratic Party is Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban is what's wrong with the Democratic Party. If you have Mark Cuban campaigning for you, you don't know what you want. You're just reacting. He is not going to address the needs of the voters. He's going to dance around and react and spew platitudes about democracy and freedom and our country is at stake. Nobody cares if the country is at stake if you're about to be evicted. You're not going to win elections until you tell Mark Cuban, go away. You're the enemy. You're a billionaire, you're the enemy. You're not a job creator. You're a job destroyer. And if you can't say that as a party, then you are going to run around like a chicken without its head on because you don't have a brain, and you're just going to be... Trump is falling from the sky. Trump is falling from the sky. If you don't know what you want, all you're going to do is be terrified of Donald Trump. Thank you to Mila and Bob in the chat room. Please subscribe to my newsletter, this channel. Go to your Thanksgiving meal. See your relatives. Figure out what you want. Do you really want to beat your crazy uncle? Is that's your triumph? Like, oh, my crazy uncle won. I can't put... If that's what you're upset about, and you can't spend Thanksgiving with these people, this is why we lose. Ignore these people, and you got to know what's important. Otherwise, you're going to react to your crazy uncle and allow him to upset you. Go to Shop David Feldman and buy garbage that you don't need. Waste money. The Trump coffee mugshot. Don't be afraid of this guy. He's a fool. He's a fool. He's a POS and a loser. Here he is at the 2029 inaugural ball. It's not too soon to pick up a Trump 2028 coffee mug. If you're going to the inauguration, pick up a Trump fart filtration mask. Some of them will be carrying an Appeal to Heaven flag at his inauguration. I'm selling an Appeal to These Nuts flag over at shopdavidfeldman.com. Conquer the 7 mountains of These Nuts. That's Cassidy wearing a Still a Democrat t-shirt. Oh, Leonard did that, my nephew. Uncle David Ferdman presents the Mope Up, and he's made cups that say the Mope Up now. Still a Democrat. What else? And Trump and Edvard Munch's The Scream. And Thanksgiving, you want to get this for Thanksgiving. You want to get this for Christmas. It's the chef's apron with the words, "Hope you're in the mood for diarrhea." This has been the mop-up for November 25th, 2024. Thank you. Best way to help me, share this episode. I'll see you in what? Not the day after Thanksgiving. Or I'm going to do a show, Tooth Hurty, Saturday morning, Eastern. I'm going to take 2 days off. Thank you for letting me do this show. Don't be frightened. Know what you want. Focus.